We've just put out to consultation the draft local nature recovery strategy. These are plans that we are required to pull together by government, and they're on broadly county footprints across the country. Now, you could argue that doesn't necessarily correlate to the way nature wants to exist. I must admit I'd rather see them being based on river catchments, but that's what we've been asked to do. And so we've pulled together what I think is an excellent document. It's now going out for consultation, but it's looking at the natural assets we have in Wiltshire, how they link into surrounding areas, particularly along rivers, and the kind of wildlife in them that we need to be particularly protecting. So if you're even vaguely interested, please have a look, give us your comments, and let us know what you think. Cabinet has now endorsed the Local Transport Plan 4, or LTP 4, to give it its snappy title. And this now goes to full council, hopefully for approval as well. It may not sound like much, but this is the strategic infrastructure on which all of our transport planning is based. And whilst it in itself doesn't have exact lists of all the pieces of work that need doing, it does contain reference to some of the big ones. For example, the need for improvements to the A36 in Salisbury or to the A350 around Westbury. But it's also got all those wider policies that we think are needed to help people move around Wiltshire however they're travelling more easily. I think the important differences with this LTP compared to previous ones is that we've now broken Wiltshire down into on a much more place-based focus. So we've got sections on rural areas, on our smaller towns, and on our 3 big settlements. And they're subtly different in approach. Our local transport plan completely understands cars are critical for our economy. For us to be able to get around the county, we need to find ways to decarbonise, to support electric vehicles. We've had a very long discussion around the Lime Down solar farm. Now, for those of you who haven't heard that mentioned before, it's a proposal for a very big 2,000 plus acre solar farm in the north of Wiltshire. Wiltshire Council are not the planning authority that will make that decision. It's what's called an NSIP, a Nationally Strategic Infrastructure Plan, and therefore it is something that will be considered by the planning inspector, and eventually the decision will be made by the Secretary of State. However, we're a consultee in that process. We invited the developers to come along. They didn't. And people who opposed the plan, who explained their logic behind their concerns. It was a chance for Cabinet to ask a lot of questions, both of officers and of those who were opposing the plans, and to look at the planning issues involved and come up with a view as to what Wiltshire Council's position should be. Now, going into that process with an open mind and an awful lot of questions, we had a very good debate. But at the end of it, it's very clear that the view of Wiltshire Council, on very good planning grounds, based around the fact that it's the proposed solar farm uses best and most versatile farmland, which you're not supposed to use for solar or anything other than farming, but also issues around public amenity, around the concern for people's mental health, and in particular the fact that the grid connection for the proposed solar farm is 13 miles away from the solar farm itself, which means the solar farm is in completely the wrong, unsustainable location. The policy of the council is that we think this is a bad application, that it should be rejected by the Secretary of State. Now, there's an awfully long way to go. There are a lot of consultations still to be carried out. We're urging the developer to carry out further consultation to try and give more information on some of the areas that, honestly, currently we don't have any detail on, around protected species, around the precise screening and location of panels, and exactly what their impact would be on, for example, the Cotswolds national landscape. So there's an awful long way to go. I would urge anyone who's got a view on this to make sure they get a consultation submission into the planning inspectorate when it gets there. But from a Wiltshire perspective, this is simply too big. It's the cumulative impact of the development is too much, and it breaks some fundamental planning rules around solar farms.